Barbara Dickson, nice to talk to you.
Hello, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Great, very well, thanks. Yes, very well indeed.
It's a real honour and a pleasure to talk to you because
Thank you.
You really are the queen of showbiz in terms of musicals. You've done so much in the theatre. We'll talk about Blood Brothers later because that's one of my favourite things you've done. But let's talk about in the beginning. And you started as a folk singer, didn't you?
Yes, in fact, you're very kind to say that I'm associated with musical theatre, but I've only ever been in 3 shows, and they just happen to have been very important ones. But yes, I came from folk music, and because I knew Willy Russell from working in folk clubs, and he used to be involved in that type of music, when he wrote the show John, Paul, George, Ringo and Bert, he asked me to come and sing the music, and I was completely unknown, as was he. So it's quite interesting that we kind of emerged, Willy Russell and myself, at the same time.
As you say, you seem to have had success after success with the musicals. You've not had a bad one, and I think that's partly to do with the fact that we think you've been in a lot more than you probably have.
Well, I've been on cast albums of 2 musicals that I didn't appear in. One was Evita, and the other was Chess. And I didn't appear in either of those, so that's why I think people kind of associate me with those shows, although I didn't actually take part in them. And my main claim to fame is my connection with Willy Russell, although in the last 2 years, of course, I did a show again, which I didn't expect to really do. I didn't expect to go back into the theatre to do anything, but I was offered the part of Viv Nicholson in Spend, and that's why I went back to the theatre again to be in that. I must say that with a family, it's not my idea of heaven because I don't live in London, and when I am in the theatre, certainly in London, I have to dissociate myself from my home and my family and go and work away from home. So it's a bit like being on an oil rig. Yes. You have to go and go somewhere where there's nobody really, and that's not my idea of heaven, so I always kind of resist going to work in the West End, but I most certainly did enjoy Spend.
What is it like being on the West End stage for a long run of a successful musical? It must be a thrill.
Well, I particularly like working at the beginning of the run when everything is still very, very fresh. I think that being in a show for a long time has its own inherent problems, and one of which is boredom, and the other of which is kind of keeping fresh. It's quite difficult to keep fresh and keep everything in your head the way it was when you first did it in the first few weeks of actually performing it. So it's quite difficult, really. Also, London musicals tend to be full of an awful lot of foreigners in the audience, and it's quite difficult if you're doing regional theatre like I have done, in style that is. Certainly Blood Brothers and Spend. There's a lot of people in the audience that don't really understand what you're on about.
They just go because they feel they ought to when they're in London.
Well, yes, and if a show's won Olivier Awards and stuff, which the shows I've been in have done, that people think, oh, it's worth seeing. But certainly Blood Brothers has proved that it does work abroad, and it can work abroad, and it's an international story. But it's never been set abroad. It's always been set still in its own original Liverpool context. And sometimes I think people don't understand what's being said. It's quite a strong regional accent, isn't it?
What I find amazing about it as well is it's not in the new form of musicals where everything's about scenery and multi-million pound sets and lighting and pyrotechnics. It is purely about the story and the actors, isn't it? And as you say, it tours during the year around the country, and it's still on full-time in the West End. It really is incredible.
It does very well in the provinces, and it does well, as far as I know, in London. If it wasn't, it wouldn't still be on. But I think you're absolutely right. It has a totally different set of parameters to any other musical that I can think of. It's much more Brecht than Broadway, let's put it like that. It's much more European. It doesn't owe anything to the American musical, although the American musical is really probably the best of its kind, really. I mean, they always say Oklahoma is probably the best musical ever written. And that could well be right, because it has darkness and light in it, if you think of it. But I don't know. I mean, obviously, Blood Brothers means a lot to me. That's all I know.
There are so many musicals that come and go, and one of my favourites, I don't know whether you saw it or know of it, but Children of Eden was got rid of very quickly after it was launched. And the problem with the musicals is, because it's a multi-million-pound business these days to get the theatre in London and to tour with it, it is risky, isn't it? And there is a lot of great musicals lost, I'm sure.
Well, it's a very, very difficult thing. I would not like to invest any money at all in a musical, because I just think that unless I'm convinced of how good they are, like Spend or Blood Brothers, I just couldn't go for it. All I know is that those musicals spoke to me, and they were much more suitable to the kind of thing that I am known for and liked for. I'm not a Broadway baby. You know, that's not what I do. I'm much more sort of European, and my folk music background comes out in all my work. So it's more, I like more serious stuff, really. I don't know what the average person in the street likes musical-wise. They do still like Andrew Lloyd Webber's things, I suppose. I don't know about anything else. I mean, I think the old revivals always seem to work, the revivals of the great musicals, but hardly any of the new ones work at all, and a lot of the new ones don't seem to be any good. At least that's received wisdom by the critics. So who am I to argue, because I don't really know that much about it.
There's a lot of money invested in it, I know that for sure.
Absolutely. Well, my friend Elaine Page, who's done an awful lot more in musical theatre than I have, she, I know, likes the more kind of straightforward thing. She would be inclined to go towards something that was more conventional, whereas I would certainly go the other way.
Having spoke to many actors and actresses over the last few weeks, I know there is a certain frustration in the UK with the American musicals coming over, such as The Lion King from Disney and such things, which are huge budgeted, not so much as musicals, but masterpieces of the stage. And as I talked about earlier, the great lighting and the scenery. Do you find that a frustration? Would you rather it be more simplistic about the story?
Well, yes, I would, in a word. I mean, I think that things like The Lion King they're events. They're not musicals, really, because I don't think the music's very good. I think it's all to do with the visuals. And I think that really the more interesting things musically are not really being done in musical theatre. I think it's very difficult because it's a very finite market. You know, there's not an awful lot of people want to go to the theatre, full stop. You just try and put a play on and see how far you get with that. So it's a very much a diminishing market. There's not a lot of people out there would get off their butts to go and see anything in the theatre. So it's quite interesting. It's also quite difficult to get anybody to come to anything. And in these days of DVDs and all that kind of stuff, you know, and the home entertainment has improved and the internet and everything, people don't really want to go out unless it's going to be, I suppose, something spectacular, but that's not what I like.
I think the other slight problem with the musicals is it can cost you up to 45 quid to go and see a London musical, and most people can't afford it.
No, and if they do afford it and they do go, they might not like it, and it's been an awful lot of money.
Now, before we go, I want to talk to you about your new CD, Barbara Dickson for the Record. Now, this is an amazing CD, a double CD. The first CD has got all your greatest hits on, including I Know Him So Well, Answer Me, Caravans, and January, February, which we heard earlier. And your second CD is You Live in Concert. Now, I want to talk about your voice. Is it natural, that amazing, listenable voice that you have, or is it years and years of training?
No, I've never worked on my voice. My voice is my sound, and I just open my mouth and the sound comes out. But I like to... It's the material that I choose makes the expression in my voice obviously sing, because obviously the better the material, the more I feel connected with it. So I would say there's a lot to do with the material as well.
Is it an obsession for you where you have to sing every day? Is it something that your day wouldn't be complete if you didn't sing?
Oh, no, not at all. No, there's long periods where I don't sing at all, and I don't even do a warm-up. I don't even think about it at all, because I have 3 children and a husband, and I mean, I have a life as well as my career. So very often I'm not even thinking about that. And if I'm acting, for example, I don't do any singing at all. But the singing is really basically the core of my being. It's what people remember when they think about me. It's what they think of, and it's also where I think I express myself the most naturally.
You were rewarded in 2001 when you were given the OBE for your services to music and drama. That must have been a great day for you. It was all made worth it, really.
Yes, it was great. It was nice to be given an OBE. I didn't expect to get that ever, and it was lovely. It was very nice to be able to take my children to Buckingham Palace. That was I think the biggest thrill for me was to be able to take my kids to inside the Buckingham Palace, and they watched me get my OBE from the Queen. So that's a great memory for them, and the youngest one's only 12.
May I ask what you said to Her Majesty and what she said to you?
Well, she was just talking to me about my career, and they don't say much. She can't say much because she has about 100 people to decorate on one of these investitures. So it's very, very difficult. So you have to keep it snappy. And I was going to do a show for her in June, which was postponed because the Queen Mother died. And I just said to her, I'm looking forward to singing for you in the future. And in fact, it was just about to come up, the singing engagement, where I said, I'll look forward to that.
Have you performed before?
Yeah, no, not before that time, but I've done a lot for Prince Philip and Princess Anne, and I've done quite a lot of royal stuff, but not, the Queen has never been there, and I've never done the royal variety. I don't really.
But you're very busy, say, in your home life, but we want to see you again somewhere. Are we going to see you in the near future in a musical maybe, or in a new play or something?
I have no idea. I've absolutely no idea. My priority just now is to do some recording, and I am going to be doing a concert tour, I think, towards the end of next year. But I really don't think I'll be on tour very much in the early part of the year, because I want to do some other things. So live performances for the moment are being shelved, and I have no plans to go into the theatre as we speak.
Barbara Dickson, thank you very much for talking to us today on the
Thank
magic of the musicals.
Much.